Hi everyone, I'm Swift, and today I'm going to be talking about the villains of Trollhunters. Super mega serious spoilers ahead for Trollhunters, if that wasn't obvious. Also, in case you couldn't tell, I finally got a new mic, so I don't sound like a muffled static monster anymore. For the glory of Merlin, daylight is mine to command. Trollhunters is a Dreamworks cartoon created for Netflix by Guillermo del Toro. Yes, that Guillermo del Toro. It tells the story of average high schooler Jim Lake, who one day is chosen by a magic amulet to become the protector of trollkind. Trollhunters is a real fun ride of a show with high-stakes action, great world building, and wonderful characters. Thanks to its success, Trollhunters became the first in a trilogy of shows taking place in the not-so-sleepy town of Arcadia, with Three Below following in its footsteps and the highly anticipated Wizards coming out very soon. Jim is an unexpectedly real protagonist and is a hero who we get to watch struggle, grow, and eventually become more than he ever thought he could be. But a hero is only as good as his villains. And one of Trollhunters' greatest strengths is its villains. Or at least, the side ones. Gunmar, Balvar, and ultimately Morgana are the primary villains of Trollhunters, and I hate to say it, but they just aren't as compelling as their minions and underlings. The show does a great job of setting up Gunmar as a terrifying adversary, but that's really all he is. Big, terrifying, bad troll dictator man. We know that he's fully capable of utterly decimating all of humanity and the troll market, but apart from a desire to rule the world, we don't really have any deep insight into what his motivations are. His son Balvar is even worse because he doesn't even come with the fear factor, and apart from wanting to free his dad from the Darklands, he's honestly mostly forgettable. We aren't really given insight into their goals and emotions beyond trolls will rule the earth and humans taste good. Also, I am angry. Morgana, we know, has beef with Merlin, but we don't really know what that beef is. But in her defense, it will probably be explored in Wizards, and I am so excited for that. The side villains, meanwhile, we get to see a little more of their internal conflicts. Perhaps because Gunmar and Morgana are set up to be the big bads at the end and have to remain to some extent mysterious, more screen time is given to the side villains, allowing them to have a lot more character development. With some exceptions, they all have meaningful motivations and their own reason to fight. They aren't all being evil for evil's sake, and they aren't all okay with what circumstance forces them to do. Especially in the case of Strickler. The show explores their deeper emotions and drives during the course of the story so that we can better sympathize with their struggles. Trollhunters gives us a group of villains who we can both truly pity for their circumstance and in some ways want to succeed, but also hate for what they have done to Jim and his friends. And those are the best sorts of villains, and Trollhunters has several. I'm going to be going over 5 of them today. Strickler, or Stricklander, or Bartholomew Walter Strickler, is a man with many names, and is probably the best villain on the show. Strickler is a changeling. This means that he is a troll who years ago swapped places with a human baby in order to infiltrate human society. Unlike normal trolls, changelings can walk in sunlight and are able to swap between their human and troll form. They are typically smaller and physically weaker than normal trolls, and have more human-like builds as a result of whatever the godforsaken process was that made them. Changelings are seen as horrifying monstrosities by trolls on both sides of the war. Despite having been originally created by the evil Morgana, they are only seen as valuable tools to the Gum-Gums, the evil trolls, and nothing more. As a result, Strickler is constantly struggling to prove his worth when dealing with Balvar and other trolls. Despite Strickler being the leader of the Janus Order, which is basically the secret club all changelings are part of, Balvar treats him like an inexperienced idiot, incapable of managing anything. Balvar doesn't trust Strickler's strategies and is certain that deep down inside, Strickler is a dirty human. It doesn't take long for Strickler to change gears and instead turn his goals towards helping changelings rather than Gum-Gums. Unfortunately for Jim, that still makes him a villain. At the same time he is struggling with this conflict, Strickler is also struggling with his love of humanity. Strickler's public human identity is a high school history teacher, and it's clear that he loves human history and culture and wishes that he could be part of it, just as much as he wishes that he could be accepted by trolls. He has careful, delicate, un-troll-like mannerisms, even in his troll form. This really shows how much he has tried to become human, in spite of the reality that he never can be human. It makes him an extremely sympathetic villain, because he has dreams and desires that are entirely innocent and even relatable. He wishes he was something he's not, so he strives to be as close to that something as he can be. As a villain, it's a weakness, but as a character, it's perfectly lovable, if not sad. Basically, it pulls on people's heartstrings. And then, not only is Strickler Jim's history teacher and fully aware that Jim is the troll hunter, but he is in love with Jim's mother, Barbara. We get to see his relationship with her grow from acquaintances to much more as the story progresses. This gives viewers an emotional attachment to their relationship, and from that an emotional attachment to Strickler himself. It makes it that much worse when he chooses to use Barbara to protect himself from Jim. Strickler isn't a cold and cruel villain. After he makes this mistake, he regrets it immensely, and we follow his story as he tries everything to make up for it, never quite fully able to make up with Barbara. His love of her also shows how much he hates himself. Strickler knows that a troll shouldn't want to be with a human, and that a human would never want to be with a troll. That, combined with his hopeless wish to be human, a wish that would allow him to be able to be with Barbara if it would only come true, kind of creates the sympathetic underdog that everyone wants to root for, out of a villain. The whole relationship also results in some grade-A comedic scenes as Jim and Strickler try to keep the whole troll thing a secret from Barbara while also beating each other up at the dinner table. But that's another story. On top of all that, he has great one-liners and kick-ass fight scenes. Strickler is a downright fantastic villain who, like a changeling, never quite treads all the way in the light or in the dark. Angor Rot is the definition of a tragic villain. Centuries ago, when Gunmar was at the height of his power, Angor was the guardian of his people. Despite being a powerful magician, he felt he didn't have the strength he needed to protect his people from the Gum-Gums. So Angor sought other means and tracked down the Pale Lady Morgana. He made a deal with her for ultimate power and unwittingly gave her complete control of his soul in exchange for it. Now, instead of protecting his people, he was forced to slaughter them with the unspeakable power he was given, since apparently he missed the memo that Morgana was on the Gum-Gum's side. Morgana trapped Angor's soul inside of a ring called the Infernicopula, and whoever wears that ring controls Angor Rot. Morgana makes Angor into her dark champion, a specialized troll hunter assassin, using him to destroy Merlin's champions of light. Every troll hunter he kills has his soul sucked inside the void that is Angor Rot. Angor is desperate to fill in the hole where his soul should be. Centuries later, long after Gunmar had been banished, Angor Rot was put into Rockman sleep mode. He stays that way until Strickler gains possession of the Infernicopula and uses it to awaken Angor Rot and make him his puppet. Now, Angor Rot finds himself forced to do the bidding of some power-hungry changeling jerk who he could overpower easily if the ring didn't protect Strickler. Strickler orders Angor to kill Jim, but is impatient with Angor's methods. Angor, being basically a D&D shepherd druid with a few levels and undying warlock, doesn't do head-on fighting. Instead, he debuffs his enemies and sends his summons after them. Strickler doesn't really get that and responds abusively to Angor's seeming lack of results. Eventually, Jim gets his hands on the ring, and Jim toys with the possibility of using it to control Angor Rot. He never gets to make that decision, as Jim and Angor get into a fight before that can happen. During the fight, the ring is destroyed, and Angor's soul along with it. Angor is enraged. The empty void inside of him can never be filled. He isn't sure if he is even a person anymore, so much as a force of murderous rage. Now, he wants nothing more than to destroy both Jim and Strickler as revenge for his enslavement and the destruction of his soul. Angor is killed in an epic battle for revenge in the Hero's Forge near Troll Market. In his death, the souls of all of the Trollhunters he's killed are released, and it seems that maybe Angor can finally be put to rest. A sad, broken husk of a once great troll. No. Poor unfortunate Angor Rot gets forcefully glued back together by Morgana in Season 3 and told to work with Gunmar, which he hates. She even still has control over him, which he also hates. Angor is shown to disapprove of Gunmar's treatment of Droll, who at the time was his personal rock puppet, seeing parallels between himself and the mind-controlled troll. Angor Rot knows that he is more powerful than the people who control him, but has no control over his own destiny. All he ever wanted to do was save his people, but now they are long dead and he has absolutely nothing left. He cuts chunks of himself off to perform magic in a showing of just how hollow he has become inside. And yet, he still has to keep fighting, never for anything he believes in, always for the whims of a weaker man than him, and he is powerless to do anything about it. Ultimately, he regains control of his own destiny and is integral to the defeat of Morgana. His character design is probably my favorite in the show. Just look at him. The way he uses pieces of his own rock flesh to summon golems is amazing, and that just strikes me as pure, raw magic. 10 out of 10, kick-ass bad guy. You go, Angor Rot. Nomura, like Strickler, is a changeling. Unlike Strickler, she's less keen on humans despite working in a history museum. She finds a lot of human behaviors and norms revolting, but she loves Petyr Gynt, an aria about a boy who faces trolls. At first, this just seems like a strange quirk she has in order to make her seem extra freaky as she chases Jim and Toby through the museum to the music of In the Halls of the Mountain King with a horde of goblins behind her like some kind of terrifying violent demon. But later we learn there's more to it. We also know that at some point in the past she was romantic with Troll, the son of the last Trollhunter, until he found out that she's a changeling. But that, unfortunately, is barely elaborated on. Nomura is tasked by the Janus Order with the construction and protection of Killahead Bridge, a magical bridge between the human world and the Darklands where Gunmar is imprisoned. The bridge is hidden in plain sight in her museum. Eventually, she and the Gum forces are successful in activating the bridge, but naturally, their efforts are thwarted by Jim and friends. While the portal into the Darklands is open, Nomura is sucked inside. Later, when both she and Jim are held prisoner by Gunmar in the Darklands, we learn that Nomura has been kept as Gunmar's plaything and he has her fight beasts almost daily. Gunmar sees her as a failure and impure, and finds amusement in her misery. Nomura has lost all hope of ever returning to the human world. While imprisoned, Jim and her form an unlikely friendship, with Jim refusing to give up hope that his friends will find him, and Nomura wanting to believe him. Nomura explains to Jim the importance Gynt has to her. She explains how she heard it when she was a young changeling who didn't fit in the human world, and how what the Troll King tells Gynt impacted her. To thyself be true, and who cares what the world thinks. After telling Jim this, she sadly admits that it's just a play. Petyr Gynt is a Danish play by Henrik Ibsen that premiered in 1876. It tells the story of the selfish anti-hero Petyr Gynt. Petyr is an arrogant narcissist who tells the stories of his personal greatness and brags about things he has personally never done. When he is called out for lying, he claims his lies are true. The famous quote that Nomura connects with, "To thine own self be true," is really the main point of the play. Gynt's arrogance leads him to pass himself off as a great man, but in reality, he's an awful man. This duality is reflected in Nomura. Which side is Nomura's true side? What is her true self? The troll? The human? Are trolls and humans any different, as the Troll King in Petyr Gynt asks? Nomura is constantly seeking the answer to the question, who am I? To which self should I be true? When Petyr Gynt isn't true to himself, he lives an awful life and dies having done nothing, despite pretending that he had done everything. Nomura wants to find a way to avoid this mistake and make her life a life she can look back on and be happy for. Hopefully by being not a troll or a human, but rather by being herself. Nomura is a woman of few words, but we know from her body language, expression, and tone that for Nomura, the story of Gynt was a safe refuge. She saw herself in the message of Petyr Gynt. She found acceptance for what she was in the words of the Troll King. But after everything that had happened to her in the Darklands, she doubted herself and began to believe the message she found of hope and self-acceptance was a lie. That there was no place for changelings and that there would be no happy ending for her. But Jim helps her to believe otherwise, and helps her to escape. Compared to Strickler and Angor Rot, Nomura is definitely less elaborate, but she's still worth mentioning. She has a killer design, and the Darklands story arc is one of my favorites in the entire show. They could have very easily just had her be a generic scary lady who Jim fights like once or twice, but instead they took the time to flesh her out and make her sympathetic, and that's just really cool. Dictatious is Blinky's brother and Gunmar's advisor in the Darklands. From a narrative standpoint, Dictatious serves to further Blinky's personal story arc. For the longest time, Blinky believed that his brother died centuries ago fighting against the Gumgums and looked up to his brother immensely. Almost every book in his library was originally his brother's. Blinky's love of the academic and thirst for knowledge stems from his love and memory of his brother. Blinky keeps him alive in a way by continuing down his path as a scholar. Only, Dictatious didn't die. Instead, he joined the Gumgums and became Gunmar's most trusted advisor. When Gunmar was trapped in the Darklands all those years ago, Dictatious was too. Dictatious believes that Gunmar is Trollkind's salvation and that he will lead to a restoration of Earth, which we can assume isn't exactly going to be the second coming of Christ. When he finally escapes the Darklands, permanently blinded from his fight with his brother, Dictatious struggles to hold on to his power. He is old, broken merch. He doesn't know anything about the modern human world, and the new leader of the Janus Order, Otto, is doing a great job of getting on Gunmar's good side. Dictatious begins to fear for his life as Otto turns all of the changelings and starts to turn Gunmar against him. So Dictatious gets clever. He knows that Gunmar fanatically worships Morgana, who Dictatious believes has been dead for centuries. Dictatious pretends to receive visions from the Pale Lady Morgana, using his supposed visions to encourage Gunmar to not only trust him again, but also to encourage the restoration to go his way, and also to keep Gunmar happy. This obviously backfires big time, and eventually he shows up on Jim's doorstep begging for protection. While he pretends to be an oracle, Dictatious fills the role of a tension creator within the villainous group. Previously, this was attempted with Balvar and Strickler's dislike of each other, but that was mostly shown through the occasional awkward comment and didn't provide much more. Dictatious's actions are more subtle, more behind the scenes. They show just how trusting of Morgana's existence Gunmar is, and how easily fooled he is when he believes Morgana is involved. They create a question of what will happen when Dictatious is eventually discovered, and how this unique situation he's put himself in will affect not just him, but Gunmar as well. This is especially intriguing when, as a consequence of Dictatious's lie, we learn that not everyone working for Gunmar has as much faith in Morgana as he does, and unravels each villain's actual beliefs. He shows that the villains are their own people, working for themselves together. They aren't just mindless followers of Gunmar. This allows the plot to unfold in a more natural way, and that leaves the audience excited to find out just how these different motives will clash in the endgame. Dictatious is that evil advisor guy who wants power, but recognizes that he doesn't have what it takes or the desire to be the one in charge. Instead, he will happily settle for being the hand-holder and spooky ear whisperer of the big bad. He's grown comfortable being Gunmar's personal evil buddy for the past 1,000 years and forgot what a battle it was to get there. And so when he faces competition for Gunmar's attention for the first time in the forms of Otto and Usurna, he kind of falls apart. His position in the Darklands was secure. It never occurred to him that changeling impures and a loyalist queen from the literal pits of the earth would be his undoing. He thought that he and Gunmar would just saunter into the mortal realm, conquer it, and all of the trolls there would bow and kiss his feet because that's what was expected of them. Bless his soul. Apparently Dictatious was supposed to be killed off, but the creators liked Mark Hamill's performance as him so much that he got to stay on. It goes without saying, need a great villain performance? Cast Hamill. Usurna is the queen of the Gra'la and a member of the Troll Tribunal. She starts out as an antagonistic force, but not as blatantly evil. When she first comes to take Arg back to their homeland, it initially appears that she cares a great deal about trollkind, especially other Gra'la, and doesn't have any ulterior motives. Then Jim comes back from the Darklands and she remains in Troll Market, saying that it's for the best interest of the Tribunal due to Vendel's mishandling of the Killahead Bridge. This makes her suspicious to the viewer, but she could still be seen as technically a good guy, just with opposing views. When Jim faces punishment for releasing Gunmar, Usurna proposes the destruction of the amulet, arguing that trolls have relied on Merlin's magic for too long. The viewer has increased suspicion if they haven't already figured it out, because on the one hand, she does make a fair anti-main character argument. On the other hand, it sure benefits Gunmar if there's no Trollhunter around. Then, she kills Vendel in order to rig the trial against Jim, and in the aftermath, reveals that she has been an agent of Gunmar all along. With Vendel and Jim out of the way, she can finally reveal herself to Troll Market and bring Gunmar to the rule. Usurna hates humans. She doesn't even see Jim as a person, as is evident from her statements after his rigged trial. She wants to see the glorious rise of trollkind, but has been playing the long political game, acting as a double agent working for Gunmar. We even find out that she sold Gra'la children, including Arg, in secret to Gunmar to serve in his army centuries ago. This is especially jarring when we remember that all Gra'la are interconnected. When Arg was dying from Angor Rot's poison, the Gra'la simply knew and came to Troll Market in order to save him. Not only that, but they all see each other as family, even when they aren't related by blood. Now, unlike the Gra'la, when Arg is angry, he glows gum green. Normally, Gra'la glow blue. Arg only glows blue when touching other Gra'la. We know from his disjointed speech and implied history that the Gum-Gums did some unspeakable things to him. When Arg and the other children were being tortured and made into Gum-Gum soldiers, the entire Gra'la people had to have felt it, and Usurna was okay with that cost. It's no wonder that her own soldiers, who up to that point had been okay with working with Gunmar because they loved their queen, turned on her so quickly when they learned the truth. She had betrayed their family. Usurna plays a dangerous game, and she plays it well. She's managed to keep the truth from her people in the Troll Tribunal for at least 1,000 years. Usurna told her people the children had been kidnapped and probably used their shared pain as a unifying force. Usurna can feel their pain too, but chooses to endure it because she sees it as a necessary sacrifice in order for trollkind to get where she wants it to be. She's an expert at manipulating emotions. She managed to turn so many trolls against Jim by framing him for Vendel's death. She is a master of propaganda and fully recognizes how perceptions can be used to weaken her enemies and strengthen her own cause, and that makes her an incredibly dangerous villain. Also, her design is amazing. I'm a sucker for anything that glows in the dark, but she really sticks out to me as cool looking. Unlike the other villains in Trollhunters, it isn't clear at first glance that she's evil. If anything, she looks like a neutral party, which is really cool given her role in the story. The side villains of Trollhunters are awesome, both as characters and contributors to the overall narrative. Then there's the main villains. Don't get me wrong, Gunmar and Morgana do a great job at what they need to do. But that's all they do. They never go beyond what we expect of them. Whenever we see them, they are either standing dramatically, sitting on a throne, or being threatening to their underlings. We don't really have much insight into their emotional or personal conflicts. We know that they are evil, we know that they want to rule the world, but we don't get much more than that. So we're going to start with Balvar. Balvar was always sort of doomed. By default, he's the less cool and less scary version of his dad. He's physically smaller, he's less skilled, he's just plain less terrifying. Sure, he makes for a decent adversary for Jim in Season 1, but he's ultimately forgettable. He may have killed Kanjigar and was a considerable threat for an inexperienced Jim, but you can't help but stop and think about the fact that he's been trying to free his dad Gunmar for 1,000 years and still hasn't managed it. And to top it all off, gets killed pretty easily by a teenager who's only been wielding a sword for like 2 months. Just oof. He does help to enhance Strickler's personal struggles with his distrust of Strickler and other changelings, but it's not really elaborated on. It just serves to further show us what a big meanie rock he is. And we know that he wants to free his dad, but we know literally nothing about his personal past with his father, or, sorry for this imagery, who the mother was, and what their relationship was like. Is Gunmar even capable of love? There's some good fanfiction potential here that I will not be pursuing. At the end of the day, Balvar is just kind of there to be that first big bad Jim has to defeat before he's ready to face Gunmar and everything else. He's big, he's angry, he wants to free his dad, and that's basically it. Which is perfectly fine for the narrative, but they really could have done more with him. Gunmar is, without a doubt, scary. Jim's misadventure in the Darklands especially paints us a picture of a cruel, war-hungry tyrant. Gunmar's background is explained in history lessons given by Blinky, while Jim was collecting the Triumvirate Stones. He was literally born evil, born from a corrupted Heartstone, and then went on to early Horde-style kill countless kings and leaders, all while uniting the mean factions of trolls into the Gum-Gums in a quest to conquer the surface lands. Then the battle at Killahead Bridge happened, and he and all of his army, except Balvar, were trapped in the Darklands for the next 1,000 years with little hope of escape. He wants to get free, conquer the earth, and eat lots of humans because they are delish, and that's honestly basically it. So if it wasn't clear at this point, I like to have some meat on my character motivation bones. And Gunmar just being born evil is kind of lame. And it, funny enough, doesn't totally make sense. Like, obviously he's an evil monster and does horrible things, but Gunmar was charismatic enough in that conquest-loving warlord sort of way to unite warring tribes of trolls under one idea. Sure, he uses his freaky sword to brainwash people who disagree with him, but we can see that he doesn't have to in order to get followers. We know that he in some way cares about his son, we know that he respects loyalty, and that he worships Morgana even when no one else does. Saying he does what he does because he was born evil just cheapens the whole thing. It's lazy. If anything, he seems like that guy who, if you asked him, he would say, yeah, I want good things for trolls. But he loves the endless conquest of war more than the intricate details of leading. His allies don't believe in Morgana, but they believe in his cause, and recognize that he is an excellent, however cruel, leader. So they are willing to work with him and be gentle, or stupid in Dictatious' case, about the whole worshipping Morgana thing. Gunmar is more interesting if we see him as a warlord who does evil things, rather than as some unspeakable force who was literally born evil from a magic rock. Morgana is that cool villain we have gradually built up to, with hints throughout the series where we aren't even sure if she's actually real or not, and then BAM! The show delivers. She's evil. She's powerful. She has a deep, dark past that's intimately wrapped up with the very core of the show. And we don't know what it is. We know that she and Merlin had a big falling out and that he lopped off her hand and made it into the enchantress soup that became the amulet. We know that she made the changelings, that she's been using the Gum-Gums and Gunmar to get revenge on Merlin, but we have no idea why they hate each other. We know that the entire conflict of the show has been because of these two, but we don't know what happened beyond something really bad, and Morgana was probably power crazy or something. Because of this, her role in Trollhunters is a bit weak. She has a crazy amount of potential for wizards, and that's when we'll probably get her backstory. But in Trollhunters, she really just shows up, scares the heroes, fights a little, and then loses. That doesn't really allow her to play much of a role in the final portion of the story, especially since she's defeated in the same fight as Gunmar, so she barely gets her own time to shine after finally being released from her prison. We had all of that build-up, all of that mystery, and all of that warning suggesting she's incredibly powerful, unstoppable, and then she's just banished to the Shadow Realm in one fight. and against an amateur wielding her own staff. Somehow. So all that buildup had basically no real payoff, and on top of that, we literally have no idea who this person is who was just banished. Why do we hate her? I mean, yeah, obviously she's evil, but why? Like, don't get me wrong, she does some of the coolest stuff in the show, like when she possesses Claire, literally the entire Angor Rot subplot, or how smoothly she plays Gunmar, not to mention the Eternal Night itself, but not knowing why is pretty frustrating. I'm confident that Wizards will answer all of our questions, though, and I cannot wait to see the scary gold lady tell us why she's so dang evil. If it wasn't obvious, I love a good villain, and Trollhunters delivers. Watching these sad, desperate, and otherwise vile individuals conspire and fight for power and relevance is fantastic. They serve to shape the narrative in a way that is interesting, while also providing a true challenge and threat to Jim. I can't wait to meet the villains of Wizards. I can't wait to see what comes next for Jim and all of the other heroes of Arcadia. It will be thrilling to see one last chapter in the Tales of Arcadia, and to learn the true origins of Merlin and Morgana's hatred of each other. And personally, I'm just hoping my crackpot time cat theory is true. I mean, come on, look at these guys.